Seventh place in the Big Ten East is definitely the Rutgers. Last year they were supposed to take a step forward, but they actually took a step back, and they're 5-8. And this year they probably got even worse. What makes you think that they're gonna do much better? I don't really know. And starting out on the receiving end, they lost a bunch of talent this year. It's not gonna get better. There was actually a strength last year and they lost it. They have an inexperienced QB, and on the defense, it is also pretty bad. They got some secondary members, but that's really all. The Rutgers, I thought they were gonna be in better position, but now they're not. They got Eisen and Young and Melton. They got potential to build on it, to build on their foundation. But right now, they only have a couple good players, and it's not looking too good for the years ahead, because you don't have enough players to say that you're building something. So you're gonna need more Rutgers. 7th place in the Big Ten East. 6th place in the Big Ten East, I got Indiana. Like the Rutgers, they were actually playoff potential team last year, and they choked. Their defense was terrible. It was their main weakness. Their offense was also bad, and their defense is probably even worse. Out of all the defensive players from last year who returned this year, the player who had the most tackles had 64, which is not that bad, but that's the most, 64. And no player who's on the team this year, who was on the team last year, had more than 1 sack. That shows the inexperience, and if you have a defense this bad against a schedule this good, it's going to be terrible. This is probably going to be a historic bad defense. At least they got good linebackers, like Cam Jones, and they got Matthews at least, but that's really it. And James Head, they really got nothing to build on. On offense, they got potential, which is why I think they might be able to win a couple games. The quarterback's a question mark. At running back, I think they're really good. They got the transfer from Auburn who had over 1,000 rushing yards last year, but their offensive line is not that good. And with a defense that bad and against a schedule that good, you think that a good offense, just good offense like Indiana, doesn't cut it. You need a great offense. Their offense has potential, but it's not quite there yet. And with that defense, I don't think there's a shot they do good. 5th place, I got Maryland. I actually don't think that Maryland is that bad this year. Starting out on offense, they got Tua Tagovailoa's brother, and we all know he has potential, and he showed it. I think he's yet to live up to his big hype, but I think this year's going to be a big step, and he has everything. He has so much returning receivers and transfers. Dante Dominguez is one of their top receivers this year. He had 903 yards last year. They got Jacob Copeland. He was one of the top recruits in his class, and in his career at Florida, he's had 24 starts and 1,366 yards. You also got Raheem Jarrett. He had 829 yards last year and 13 Big Ten. I don't think their running back is that good, because for a team like Maryland to have a truly elite offense, I think you're going to need double attack. Colby McDonald's kind of a question mark. And on the offensive line, they've got 3 juniors. And it's actually a very solid group this year. Again, I don't think it lives up to teams like, Ohio State with Smith and Jigba, Harrison, because their offensive line's good but not great, and they don't have an elite running back. But I feel like if they go all in the air raid and their offensive line performs, their offense can be very good. On defense, they got potential, but they're not that experienced. Greg China Rose, watch out for him. He's had 6 career starts. He's pretty highly recruited. He's had 5 sacks last year too. Yeah, watch him to break out. Moa Makileo Kite, however you say it, he was highly recruited. He had 4 sacks last year. And last year, Adam Fanini, had 40 tackles last year. He was 3rd team All Big Ten. Also, the rest of your defense isn't really that noteworthy. You got Hippolyte, he's good. Bennett's good, and their secondary is actually pretty decent, which is why I think they're gonna hold their own a little bit against teams like Ohio State. But if their defensive line doesn't live up to their potential, they got Braid and Trader and Banks, and Trader and Banks are much more secure. But again, I think their secondary is good, but it's not going to be amazing. And if their defensive line lives up to their potential, their secondary doesn't implode, and they actually live up to their air raid, I think they could surprise some people. But I think 5th place. 4th place, I got the Michigan State Spartans. Last year, they had a great offense, and defense was their problem. This year, they have most of their offense returning stars left, except a couple big ones who are replaced by good players, but not like players that can make up their production, which is why I call this offense the dumbed down version. It's going to be still pretty good, but it's going to be like the less good version of last year. And if last year's team is good, but it wasn't like amazing, it's not like you're talking about the dumbed down version of Ohio State's offense. Last year it's Michigan State, which is why even I don't think a dumbed down version of their offense is enough to carry them to the playoffs, but it's still very good. Peyton Thorne is back. I think he's going to be good. The running back that they got from Wisconsin, he's a big question mark. I don't really like him as much. And the offensive line is a big question mark, which is why I think they're going to struggle on the ground. But it's still like, it's the same as last year, but worse. And at wide receiver, they got Trey Mosley, who's got potential. Foster's got potential, and Jaden Reed. I think they're going to be really dependent on their passing game. And again, I think it's going to be good, but not great, which might not be enough to win you all the games, but you still can't really be that picky. Jaden Reed and Thorne's going to be a top connection along with a solid running back. And if their other receivers can contribute, the rest of their offense can be good. So again, a dumbed down version of last year isn't bad. Defense is actually their strength. They got a really, really great defensive line class, and they hit it out with their transfer portal again with Jacob Slade, Chris Bogley from Florida, 8 sacks in 3 years there. And Burrows also got potential, 34 tackles last year. So I think their pressure is going to be better than ever. And their secondary is actually not that bad. Xavier Henderson's one of the top safeties in the nation. And Angelo Goose, he had 83 tackles last year and 8 passes defended. So this is basically a dumbed down version of last year's offense. And some big upgrades at defense, but their cornerbacks are still so garbage. They're still really bad, which is going to be a problem. And they don't really have much depth. But yeah, I think they have potential to make the playoffs. But again, I don't think their offense is as high-flying as last year, which is not going to be able to keep up with a lot of those things. Plus, if you have injuries on your defense. But I still think it's really good. You can't really be that picky. 4th place. 3rd place in the East, Michigan Wolverines. I am a Michigan fan, so Michigan fans don't get mad. I'm not an Ohio State fan. Yes, I think they have one of the top rushing attacks in the nation, with Braylon Edwards being their backup, one of the top recruited guys. He showed promise. And Blake Corum having 909 yards last year, while not even starting one of the most electric running backs there. Last year they won the Joe Moore Award winner, and they have like 3 starters back. And they got a transfer from Virginia who won Best Center of the Year award. This offensive line is the best in the nation. You have a better version of their running attack that was already overpowered last year, with a better version of their passing offense. J.J. McCarthy, I think, is better than McNamara. And at the receiver, it's a question mark. This is going to determine whether their pass offense is going to fly, which is why I don't really classify their offense like to keep up with Ohio State, because you got Ronnie Bell, Cornelius Johnson's a question mark, Angelo Anthony's potential, but he's a question mark. Same with Roman Wilson. So if those receivers can live up to their potential and there's no injuries, I think we're going to be good. Their offense is going to be their strength this year. And that leads to the defense. I think if the defense holds its own, it's at least 11 wins this year. The defense is going to be key. They've lost a lot of players like Hutchinson and Ojabo, but they do have Mike Morris, who's showed potential but not that good. But let's start with their stars. They still do have a star that could be semi like Hutchinson. Mozzie Smith is very, very good. He's 37 tackles when he wasn't even starting last year. 4 pass hurries, 2.5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Tyler Upshaw's been here forever on the bench, and he's finally going to get his time to shine as a senior. So it's going to be who's going to step up for them. On their linebacking side, it's kind of thin because a lot of them left. But Junior Colson was an all-freshman team Big Ten, 61 tackles last year as a true freshman. He's returning. And their secondary is either going to be elite or not. Because you got Will Johnson, the 5-star. You got DJ Turner, hoping that he can live up to his expectations. 3rd spot's kind of a mystery. Safety, you got Moore and Moten, who both showed potential, but are just freshmen. A lot of it's going to be if those guys that can show potential do good. And with a team this inexperienced, I don't feel comfortable with them putting them first. But with their high-flying offense and with just how well coached they are, I don't think that the worst-case scenario with all these players is going to happen that much. So I think a couple guys break out. Their ceiling is Big Ten champion, but their floor is 9-3. That's what I have them there. 2nd place, I got Penn State. I really like them this year. Starting out, they got Sean Clifford at quarterback, and their running back's one of the deepest rooms in the country. They did lose Noah Cain, but Kavion Lee's back with 545 yards last year when he wasn't starting and he was young. But you also got Noah Singleton, one of the top recruits in the country. If you watch his tape and research him, he's a beast. I think he's going to be probably the third best running back in the Big Ten this year. He's actually insane. And top receivers this year. Parker Washington, 802 yards last year, one of the top NFL receiving scouts. Lambert Smith, very speedy, yet to show his stuff, but he's done great in training, he's done great in camp, and he's showed potential, and he's very highly recruited. And you also got Michael Tinsley. He's very, very fast. He had over 1,700 yards in his 23 starts at Western Kentucky. They're great at holding in transfers, and they got more people on the bench. So, yeah, if you thought that Michigan's double attack was scary, they're like that on steroids. They also got a solid offensive line, I think, and they also got a on par with Iowa team defense. The reason why I like this team so much is just because how well-rounded they are. PJ Mustafar is back with being one of the best defensive tackles in the nation. Hopefully he stays healthy. Isaac is a brewing star. Beeman is a question mark. And Turbin Jr., he had 30 tackles last year. I think if there's one question mark, it's their defensive line. But you also got people on their bench. And there's a lot of highly recruited talent. I think that they're going to be fine. But here's when it actually gets into it. Their secondary is so good. Joey Porter, one of the second team Big Ten last year. Jair Brown, very, very good. 73 tackles last year. Ellis, 2 QB hurries last year and 3 passes defended. Very, very, very good. Kalen King, also, he was a very highly recruited person. He's had 1 start but 5 passes defended. And Sutherfield, he's had 1 start in his career but 75 tackles, 24 tackles for loss. So yeah, you got talent running around here. And if you think, oh, that's too inexperienced, they also got DeQuarion Harvey, who had 2 interceptions last year and 7 passes blocked. He's not even considered to be in there. This is one of the best secondaries in the nation of how deep they run. And yeah, you just need 1 or 2 good defensive linemen with a secondary this good, and they have that. They also have good linebackers with Jacob and King. I think this team goes the distance. Yeah. Number 1, you have Ohio State. I'm not going to spend too long explaining this. CJ Stroud, one of the best QBs in the nation. Henderson, right up there with Blake Corum. Marvin Harrison's very highly recruited, and if you read on him, he's like probably one of the most. He's gonna be in the big team, all Big Ten freshman team. Jackson Smith and Jigba's the best player in college football. You also got Fleming, and you know how good that is. Their offensive line, I think, is gonna be a question mark because with how bad they were late in the stretch, and they don't show real signs of big improvement. But again, they were pretty solid for most of the year last year, so I don't think it should be that big of a problem. So yeah, that's one of the top offenses in the league. And on defense, they got Zach Harrison and you have Vincent. I think their defensive line is overrated, but it's still very, very good. And with their Ohio State teams in the past haven't really gotten much pressure besides, Chase Young and stuff. Last year their defensive line was their problem. I think this year it's going to be really good, which is going to make them scary. You also got Denzel Burke, Ronnie Hickman, who are both very good, and Cameron Brown. Their secondary is going to be so stacked with all the transfers and returning guys that they have this year. And I think with an Ohio State team that's this good, with also a good defensive line, you see what happens with Chase Young and Justin Fields. I think it's going to remind you of the Ohio State teams of old, along with decent linebackers, and you actually have a good running back this time. I think a lot of it is going to be returning back to normal. I hate it as a Michigan fan, but they're definitely winning the Big Ten East. 7th place in the West, you definitely got Northwestern, one of the worst teams last year and this year. Didn't really add much. Their offensive line is solid, but nothing really much. Bravo, you beat Nebraska. I don't really think I'm going to spend too much time here. They are improved, and I think they're going to keep improving, but I just don't think they're good at all to deal with it. And with the Big Ten West's defense is getting better and better, I think it's going to make life very difficult for Northwestern. 6th place is going to be shocker guy than Nebraska, Corn, Huskers. And I know they got a lot of their defense is going to be very, very good with talent, but I think the reason why they lose so much close games is because their coaches do not know how to deal with talents. And with really poorly coached teams, you need a lot of talent to bail them out, and they do not have that on offense. I think it's going to be a fairly stagnant team. Last year they were close in games because their defense got injuries and they let up late, which I think it's going to be very improved, their defense, and then their offense would bail them out. This year, it's not very good, and running offense is not good. I think a Nebraska team that doesn't have an offense with already this much chaos, like you don't get that offensive talent to bail you out, that's already suicide, but whatever. I think their defense is actually pretty good, though. Yeah, and with how bad they were last year, and with a worse offense, I don't think there's a chance they do good. Fifth place, I got the Illinois Fighting Illini. I think their offense is going to be very stagnant. Tommy DeVito's got potential, but not that good. I really like Chase Brown this year to break out, but again, I don't think he's that good. Very limited at wide receiver. It's kind of non-existent. Isaiah Williams, he's decent, I guess. You got Washington and Morchis, and both of them are experienced and still haven't done anything. Offensive line is actually very good with a lot of seniors on it, and I think it's going to be a change of pace. But finally, when they have good offensive line and good coaching and everything and a good QB, everything else has to fall apart. And on their defense, it's kind of like Maryland. Like, they got some stuff to prove, but it's dumbed down. Newton had 50 tackles. I don't think he's that good. Seth Coleman and Randolph got potential. Keith Witherspoon and Sidney Brown are good, but again, they got bits and pieces of talent on defense. And I think they're definitely building something. Their secondary is very good. Smith, Sidney Brown is very good, along with Witherspoon and Martin. And they got players there, but again, it's only bits and pieces of talent with their holes at defensive line, with their stagnant offense, but I think it's going to be a step forward. Fifth place. Fourth place, I got the Minnesota Golden Gophers. I don't think they're that good, but it's the Big Ten West. Come on. I really like their defensive line this year, which is why I think they're going to create havoc. And on the secondary, they are kind of lacking, but they do got Terrell Smith and Terrell Newbin. Offense, I think they're a bit overrated, but they're not that bad. Tanner Morgan, I think, is very good. Mohamed Aribin is one of the top running backs, but again, I don't think he's as good as people think he is. At receiver, they got a bunch of potential. Christian Amers-Bell had over 1,000 yards, but after that, it's kind of not there. They got potential, but not much depth there. Offensive line, they got the offensive line coach from Wisconsin. I think this offense is going to take a big step, but they're really lacking the talent, and I don't think they're ready. Next year, they can make big steps, though, but I don't think they're ready. Second place, I got the Wisconsin Badgers. Kind of like Nebraska. I don't think they're going to be good with this bad of an offense. They got Dyke left, that's it. All the receivers left. Graham Mertz is still your quarterback. I don't care how good Braylon Allen is. If you can't be elite with Jonathan Taylor and a defense that's better than it is now, I don't think it's that good. And their defense is elite, but it pales in comparison to Iowa. But yeah, they got Herdberg, Johnson, Benton, Mullins, Torchio. So yeah, they got a lot of talent there. But in the Big Ten, when you got all these high-flying offenses, Wisconsin's got one of the worst offenses in the league, and it's not like Iowa where the defense is super overpowered. Their defense is a little overrated, I think. It's not complete. So I think they're going to be very competitive and very in it, but I don't think their defense is as complete as people think. And I don't think with how bad their offense is, I think their defense is going to make a couple missteps. So second place. First place in the Big Ten West, I got Iowa. I know their offense is terrible, but it doesn't matter. Their defense is so overpowered that it doesn't matter how bad their offense is. With a schedule like this, their defense will carry them. Their defense is so stacked. I cannot. Luke Van Ness got 7 sacks last year and 33 tackles when not even starting, and Phil Steele doesn't have him as a starting defensive lineman. That's disrespect. He's starting. Joe Wagoner, he was very 84th best at his position in his class. He had 47 tackles last year. He was 14 Big Ten last year too, while not even really starting that. He had 14 starts, but still he was in and out. He's very good. I think that they have him starting over Van Ness. That's how good he is. I think that he's going to be in the bench. They got people making 14. Oh my gosh. Nick Shannon last year had 47 tackles and 2 sacks. Logan Lee, I think that he's going to be a big part. He's a sophomore. He actually came in as a tight end, and he's good and strong when he came from a tight end. 3 sacks last year and 48 tackles. Amazing. Joe Evans is what? Joe Evans and Van Ness are the ones that had 7 sacks. very good. Wagoneer's gonna carry you. Logan Lee's gonna carry you too. Like Lee's the one that switched from tight end. Wagoneer's the one. I didn't even mention. There's so much players here that they got 5 elite offensive linemen. Shannon, who was 14 Big Ten. Wagoneer, who linebacker is probably the best in the country. Seth Benson and Campbell, 143 and 145 tackles last year. 6 passes defended for Jack Campbell. I think their linebacking core is actually up to SEC, because SEC is like way more talented than Big Ten. Their athleticism is like on par to SEC. It's actually insane. Riley Moss is one of the best in the country, and I think Jamari Harris is so underrated. He had 4 interceptions last year with not really having that much starts, and 4 passes defended and 34 tackles. He goes unnoticed. Xavier Nawaki, there's a lot of competition at the secondary position, but he's highly recruited. Merriweather, he had 42 tackles and 5 passes defended. Their safety isn't perfect, and I guess Wagoneer is a little unproven, but that's all. Every single player just mentioned is elite, and I think it's very impressive how good their defense is. First place.